nice to be here. Hopefully I can chat with some of you afterwards if I make it a chance before we start here today. But I want to use my 10 minutes just to introduce myself to all of you, tell you a bit about my background and why I raised my hand to volunteer to run for this seat. So I hope you'll excuse me. I am going to read from something I wrote just because it's the only way we're going to keep it tight 10. And I didn't have time to memorize it. So you might see me glancing up and down. But yeah, let's go ahead and talk about this. So over the last 2 decades, our national politics have gotten more chaotic, more divisive, and more extreme, while our government has become less functional, less dependable, and less responsive. I've watched the Republican Party succumb to some of the most extreme conservative thinkers and stray further and further afield, not only from what most Americans want, but also from their own conservative values. I know that Project 2025 laid the GOP's reimagining of American democracy bare for all of us to see, and I think many of us are very alarmed. Their goal is clearly to return us to a democracy in name only, something akin to what the Founding Fathers first envisioned, where only landowning white men could vote. I was born in Huntington Hospital. I spent most of my childhood in the Pasadena area. My parents owned a bookstore called Alexandria 2 Bookstore on South Lake Avenue. They've had it since 1985. I grew up around both a rich Armenian and Italian immigrant community full of entrepreneurs and bona fide American dream living folks, as well as around my parents and their friends, who were a group of upwardly mobile, young, new age people that listened to Dave Matthews, drank 2-Buck Chuck, and thought their backyard drum circles were going to save the world, but never really got involved in the actual organizing. I had an early awareness, probably from my World War II refugee grandparents, of how easily you could fall into destitution, and so it was important to me from a young age to build a life that was going to be stable and secure. I started working at my parents' bookstore when I was 13, and I left high school at 16 and earned my bachelor's degree at 19. I was the first person in my family to earn a college degree. I wanted to be a professor of sociology and ended up with a PhD in environmental social science, through which I focused on understanding vulnerable populations impacted by climate change hazards. I accepted my first job as a research scientist at NOAA in 2019 during Trump's first term. It only took 4 months to know that government work wasn't for me. I had a small rainbow Bernie Sanders pin in my sterile cubicle, and apparently it violated the Hatch Act. The day that they told me to take it down was my last day working at NOAA. Being unwilling to spend 2 more years with unstable employment as a postdoc or adjunct professor, I decided to go into business for myself just like every other person in my family. My father and his brother had purchased an old homestead in Flamingo Heights by where I live in Yucca Valley in 2005, and as a teenager I helped them tear it down and rebuild it, spending most weekends out there. Throughout my young adult life, as I moved from place to place for undergrad and grad school, I'd come back to the Morongo Basin to visit my father and eventually visit aunts, uncles, and cousins that moved there as well. When I decided to start my distillery, I wanted to open it there in the Morongo Basin, not only because I had family there, but because I knew how important and valuable it would be to the community to build primary industry, real manufacturing jobs as an economic engine that could create wealth locally and not be reliant on dollars coming in from tourism from Los Angeles or federal money from DC. After Trump won his second election, I felt the need to do more. While I had done some organizing for Bernie Sanders in 2015, and helped to establish the Phoenix, Arizona chapter of the DSA, I was always too busy with school to do any kind of organizing or activism full time. Now, I had a stable business, and my wife was almost done with her medical residency, and I thought I could make a strong candidate in our unique purple district. After all, I'm a straight white guy who runs a business, shoots guns at the dry lake bed, likes to go off-roading at King of the Hammers. No one needs to know I'm a commie liberal academic, too. Throughout my life, I've watched liberal-minded academics and Democratic pundits and politicians call out injustice and shine a light on all the still unbroken systems of colonial and patriarchal oppression, which have validated the struggles of many, opened the eyes of some, but unfortunately also alienated the majority of the rest of the country. This negative side effect of the promulgation of critical theory and identity politics was obvious to me in the late aughts but seems to have never been taken seriously until disillusioned young white men started shooting up schools and self-identifying as incels. To be clear, I'm not and will never say that we need to condone, endorse, or accept intolerance or discrimination or cruelty, but we must also remember our duty to be tolerant of folks who are trying their best, but with no malice in their hearts, are nonetheless confused and uncomfortable. If we as individuals and as a party do not meet our neighbors and our countrymen with empathy and compassion, we will never earn the power to make change in our democracy. We cannot keep minorities safe if we cannot convince the majority to vote for us, and they will only vote for us if they feel seen and heard and included. We must earn their confidence and their respect to lead, and only then, from a position of credible leadership, will we be able to shape hearts and minds and move our nation back toward virtue and away from hate. I know firsthand how broken and unjust our democracy is. I turned 14 in juvenile hall, having been there sent directly from my high school and left to stay there for 6 days because I had the audacity to ask for a attorney. The charges were all dropped. I had to ask my mom to get antibiotics for a UTI she didn't have, so that my girlfriend in high school could get the antibiotics she needed for the UTI she did have, and she didn't have any health insurance or a regular physician. In 2012, with a bachelor's degree and 4 years of retail experience, I applied to over 100 grocery store chains and retail jobs in Western Washington State and didn't get a single interview. I've watched my most meritorious friends struggle and my most unremarkable friends fail their way up through money and connections. My small business struggles to earn a profit due in no small part to the impossible and crushing regulations imposed on it from Sacramento that 95% of California wouldn't think make any sense, but wholesaler duopolies and their lobbyists keep on the books to protect their rackets. Right now, as I run this campaign, I can't afford full-time childcare for my 2 kids under 2. My mom has to help me with the youngest. Plus, I have over $6,000 in credit card debt from running the campaign so far. I purchased a bulletproof vest for my petite, dark-skinned Armenian sister during Trump's first term, just in case she needed it. I worry about her. I worry about my Guatemalan stepfather, who immigrated here when he was 10 years old. I worry about my gay father. I worry about some of my closest friends who are trans and non-binary. I also worry about my own family. I know we'll always be just one string of bad luck away from homelessness in a society with no real safety net. For all these reasons, I know how important it is to fight for a fairer, kinder, and more just society. And for the same reasons, I know that the stakes are too high to be distracted by anything other than what will deliver us control over the levers of power. And that's one thing: winning elections. In my view, Democrats' failure to make most Americans feel seen and heard has led directly to the horrifying state of our government. Over 1/3 of our country does not vote for president, let alone down-ballot races. This means that nearly 2/3 of the country don't feel represented by Democrats. And this bears out in the polling. The Democratic Party has a current national approval rating of 27%. That's the lesson that is framing my campaign. It's clearer now than ever that in order to deliver the promise of a fair, free, and compassionate society, we need to actually win elections and hold power. It doesn't matter how righteous or popular our goals are, we cannot protect minorities, improve our democracy, hold the ultra-wealthy accountable, or prevent human suffering around the world if we are not in power. So here's my pitch for what to do with that power. First, I want to have a government that provides us with both expectations and guarantees. An expectation that we treat each other with kindness and respect, that we work hard to provide for ourselves and our families, that we are generous when we're able, that we're compassionate and tolerant even when we're confused or uncomfortable, and that we pay our fair share for the betterment of our community and for those who are less fortunate. I believe if we all live up to these expectations, then our government has an obligation to uphold its commitments to us as well. Government should, 1, make sure that everyone is playing by the same set of rules. If we're all paying 30 to 40% of our income in taxes, paying our fair share to make sure that roads are paved, schools are funded, and parks are clean, then Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk better pay their fair share too. If I'm in office, I will not stand for the richest among us providing the least for us while we're doing our part every day. 2, government should guarantee that if we work hard every day, we punch in and we punch out, we live up to our commitments, that at the end of our careers, we should get to retire in dignity. More and more, I see our leaders flirt with breaking this promise, acting as if this guarantee is some kind of handout, when I think we all know what it really is, which is a payment owed for services already rendered. We cannot break that promise, and that's one of the most fundamental obligations that I believe our government has to us. It's part of the deal we make living in this society. If you work hard and pay your fair share and carry your weight, then at the end of your career, you should get to retire in dignity with housing, healthy food, access to quality health care, and the ability to live in proximity to your family and your community. 3, I believe we need a government that passes laws wisely, not based on the whims and demands of donors and special interests. Too often, our legislators seem to pass laws without a second thought to the impacts on average working families. Most of our Congress people can't remember what it's like to live on $60,000 a year and worry every day about how you will pay for new tires for your car, school clothes for your always growing children, or a doctor's visit to get a new needed prescription. They probably don't remember what it's like trying to find time to get the DMV when you work all the same hours that they're open. When you need to pick up your kids from school, buy groceries, make dinner, do laundry, and get back to work the next day. The simple things like getting a new pair of eyeglasses, getting a physical, or finding time to pick up a package from the post office can be a real struggle. Most of us are working too hard, barely getting by, and frankly, we're exhausted. Life is harder than it's ever been, and more often than not, when we interact with government, it seems to be making our lives harder, not easier. The laws they pass in DC and Sacramento tend to add obstacles and inconveniences rather than helping provide us with opportunities for betterment and growth. I promise that I will do everything in my power to ensure that we approve no laws, if I'm elected, that make the average family's life more difficult. That any laws we pass must be designed to make our lives easier, because life is hard enough. We're all exhausted, we're all trying our best. So my promise to you is, if you try your best to be a good neighbor, to be a good citizen, to be a good parent, friend, brother, sister, husband, or wife, that your government won't make things harder. To the extent that the government is involved in your life, it will be there to provide safety and security and to empower and enrich you, not get in the way. Our values are righteous and our goals are worthy, and they demand that we plan for the long term. To gain and maintain power, we must think about strategy, not tactics. We do not have the luxury of failing in this mission. The opposition has succeeded in tarnishing our brand, crushing voters' spirits, and rigging the system in their favor. We must make strategic changes right now to the Democratic Party to be able to build a better America. I'm here right now giving you this speech and driving on a late night while my wife has to leave the hospital, get the kids from daycare, watch them while I do this, to ask for your support in making this possible. We need a strong representative in this district, and it takes a lot of money to get Jay Overnalty out of office. So if you believe in the vision as I've outlined it, and you believe in me as a candidate, please donate to the campaign. My goal is to get Jay Overnalty back to his sad little hillside manor and out of our lives forever. I'm happy to take a couple questions.
How are you going to do that?
How am I going to get him in office?
This guy's kind of embedded.
Well, a lot of my friends, neighbors, coworkers are independents or no party preference. I'm really proud of the fact that our kickoff fundraiser that we're having in Yucca Valley on June 14th, on the team of the co-hosts who have committed to bring in money to organize it, about half of that team are registered no party preference. I think that really says something as the campaign's barely even off the ground, because those are the voters that we need to win to get Jay Overnalty out of office. I'm sure everyone in this room knows our district is about a third Republican, about a third Democrat. The rest is independent and no party preference. These are the voters that we need to win over, and that's my focus as I run this campaign. Of course, it'll take money for mailers, for door knocking, for myself so that I can stop working my full-time job and start doing this full-time. And that's where donations are going to be key. What I can say is the DCCC, the state party, as well as some large PACs like 314 Action and the League of Conservation Voters are talking with me. They want me to bring them the receipts so that they can invest in this race. That was never the case with Derek Marshall. They wouldn't give him the time of day. With me, they're saying, Paul, put this race in play. Please put it in play. If you could raise $500,000 by October, we would like to invest a couple million on top of that. But they're only going to do that if we raise that money first. So that's my answer to how to beat Jay.
What was your last name again?
Chakalian, Chakalian.
What, in a nutshell, what can you offer as far as climate resilience or subject to climate change? The report just came out that we are headed for the warmest years on record now.
Yeah, there's basically no reversing what's already in the pipeline. We're going to be dealing with mass migration due to climate change. We're going to be dealing with astronomical costs of new infrastructure projects in the tens of billions. We basically pushed it so far that it's the reinsurance companies, it's the private sector, it's the free markets that are finally going to force things to change. That's unfortunate. If government had acted and fixed this collective action problem 30 years ago, we could have saved our society billions, if not trillions of dollars. And we could have saved human suffering around the world, especially small Pacific islands and the Sahel and places like that. In terms of moving forward, we need to pass laws to reduce our CO2 output, to increase incentives for people to be able to afford more sustainable technology. But I really want to make sure that any policy that we put forward, like I said before, doesn't make anyone's lives harder. And I think that a lot of times intellectual Democrats only see the science, only see the academic side, and sometimes they lose sight of the people, the real people. Because if you're living somewhere with no natural gas and you only have a 100 amp electrical panel and the state of California tells you you can't use your wood stove for heat anymore, and you're living on Social Security, you can't afford to get a 200 amp electric panel, and you can't afford to bring a propane tank in, what are you going to do? And so we have to be really thoughtful about how we go about this, to make sure that we're solving collective action problems, but we're also taking care of every individual in our society. Whether that means making the laws more flexible, or whether that means providing subsidies for those individuals so that they can get caught up with current standards. We can't just ignore those people. We can't leave people behind who can't afford a new Tesla, because not only does it hurt them, it also makes them not like us, and it makes them less likely to vote for us the next time around, and that's a real problem.
I think that we need to actively campaign on overturning Citizens United. I think we actively have to campaign on ranked choice voting. If people feel like their vote counts, then perhaps that third that don't count votes will get involved.
I agree, and I think we need public financing for campaigns. I hate that I have to spend most of my time fundraising. Every consultant, every Democratic operative who's helping support my campaign, they tell me, don't even bother going to the Dem clubs. Don't do any volunteering. Don't do anything. All you need to do is be on the phone and raise money. And, I listen to them 80% because they're not entirely wrong, but it's terrible. It's soul crushing. That shouldn't be the way that this works. It shouldn't cost millions of dollars to run a race for any level of office if we lived in a real democracy. So I agree with you.
I want to make sure I understood you. You said you have to raise $500,000 and then the state will give you $500,000?
The DCCC has made it very clear that they could potentially bring in $1 to $3 million of their money into this race, but they'd like to see us raise about $200,000 to $300,000 a quarter. That's not going to happen this quarter. So I'm just thinking in the sum, basically we need about $500,000 by October. If we don't hit that, it's not like it's impossible to get money later or to win, but they will start to, and this is all new, I'm not from politics. I've learned a lot over the last 4 months talking to Mark Takano, some Adam Schiff's team, Pete Aguilar's people, Derek Marshall and his team. But basically, the DCCC and some of these large PACs, they're going to pick 5, 6, 7, 8 races across the nation out of 40 or 50 that we all think are competitive. Now, right now, they don't actually think this race is competitive, but they're open when I try and convince them, and I tell them the numbers, and I tell them the strategy, they do see that it can be in play. But if we don't hit those numbers by October, the risk is that that money will go elsewhere, and let's say then we hit those numbers in, the following February, they might not have those dollars anymore. So they might have already picked other races. And so that's why it's actually incredibly bad timing for me, because my wife is going to begin as an attending physician at Redlands Community Hospital in October, at which point I'll have enough money for childcare. I'll have enough money to not have to take a salary from my current job, which means I could hire someone to replace me in my current job. So I could really put the pedal to the metal as a candidate in October. Unfortunately, I've been given this deadline to raise a lot of money by that same mark. So that's really the hat trick that I'm trying to pull off. is trying to be the most strategic and efficient with my time so that we can raise as much money as we possibly can by October, so that then in October we bring in a few million. Now I'm a full-time candidate with a few $1 million, and we can really be off to the races.
Yeah.
I would like you to campaign on voting day that has as much power and pride as the 4th of July. We should have those every 2 years.
I love the spirit. I think we need a lot more patriotism and a lot more civic organizations that bind us culturally in this nation. What I will say is, it seems obvious to me that voting day should be a national holiday. That should go without saying. But also, in 2025, I hope that most people don't have to vote in person anymore soon. Because it seems sort of ridiculous that anyone should still have to wait in a long line to cast a physical ballot. So I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying yes and. I think that's all my time, but I'll be around.